Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Last Epoch. Today I'm talking builds. What are the 5 best builds in the game right now? And will this have changed with the recent big bug fixes going on? What I mean by that are the bug fixes which were meant to prevent some of the builds becoming essentially unkillable through what is unintentional ward stacking. It's part of why 3 Masteries have reached way higher corruption levels and arena waves compared to most Masteries, and it's definitely going to shake things up a bit to see this changed, but nowhere near as much as it might initially seem. To explain exactly what we're talking about though, we can look at the recent post by the devs. They want to avoid adjustments that are going to massively reduce the potency and power of something that is overpowered and overperforming. They want to keep it overperforming, and then they'll rebalance things in the next cycle. So that means our current top masteries and builds aren't going to be cut to pieces. They should be still very strong, but they are going to be fixing literally broken things that are not meant to be that busted. So now we know what they planned with that in mind. They announced the thing with the Warlock, how they were getting 40% value when consuming minion health reward instead of the intended 4%. So that's 10 times the value they were meant to be getting, which is absolutely broken. We also know that similar was happening to a smaller degree with Runemasters. And interestingly, also Falconer. This one had its own issue with Dive Bomb and the Cloud Gatherer mechanic. It meant that smoke bombs could have their effect last longer, but rather than extending one smoke bomb, you could trigger it on a group of smoke bombs. This would lead to permanent bombs, and you would just spread more and more and more to an infinite level, leading to infinite damage potential and ward, which is also busted to the point where it could crash a server. Therefore, multiple top builds have been nerfed with these changes, but I just don't think they care that much. What's really happening here is a pushback from literal god status to insanely good. So they're still insanely good. Without their ability to reach 30 or 40k ward, they're not going to be able to ignore all damage to extreme levels, but they're still going to be reaching extremely high levels of ward in comparison to other masteries and builds, and they're still going to have way higher DPS and screen clear potential than others too. So with all that said, let's now get into the top 5 builds in Last Epoch currently. Keep in mind that this is based on my research and discussions around the topic, so do take it with a grain of salt. There are a lot of great builds in this game. We'll work our way up though from the bottom with the 5th best build, noticeably weaker than the 4 above it for a clear and important reason, and it's Paladin with their insane healing hands potential, which is an old skill that actually has a skill tree now as of 1.0. Now I could talk to you about a load of different builds, from the healing hands with Rive or damage over time, or different kinds of burst and healing based stuff that benefits also from a lot of ward. But I think overall smite is the way to go. You're able to proc healing hands at a 100% rate from range, which is just a fantastic concept. The offensive and defense potential per every single smite cast which you're spamming is huge, and it's being represented in the many impressive over 1000 corruption clear showings currently. Now there's lots of argument about whether maybe you should be going raw damage or lean into healing winds, so damage over time as a version of that build, but that's definitely too much detail for a video like this. DPS wise, the build can certainly hit very hard constantly. The smite lands and spreads more bolts around it. It procs healing hands, which can heal you, provide wards, other buffs, and work as an offensive tool. With cast speed in the build, you're able to spam those smites to such an extreme level that you are just blinding things in lightning. Now depending on your choices, you can all in push the DPS potential with both Javelin Volatile Reversal, buffing yourself and debuffing the enemies at the same time, and that's something that's worth considering because the damage is actually, relative to the other builds in this video, the weaker part. Smite healing hands is just extremely survivable. You can play it with a shield for tons of perks, or forgo that survivability for more DPS, which is certainly a lot more risky. In general though, it definitely doesn't take much to get loads of ward going. There's literally a skill in the skill tree of healing hands that helps with converting to ward. There's this wild clip of a player called Iva Markova reaching over 90,000 ward for a brief moment during a 1,500 plus corruption monolith, which is a silly example but pretty awesome to see. It's much more reasonable to see say 20 to 30k in a mostly complete ideal build, and that's certainly competitive with the rest of the builds today, but it's 5th for that important reason. Like I said, it's the damage. It just can't really compete without making significantly more sacrifices than the other builds. It also can't screen clear in the same way others can. Their effect, spreads and hits a massive area, while smite kind of hits that area, spreads a bit, but not in the same way. All the same, they're able to mop up monoliths super fast, DPS single target really effectively where you can just stand and tank it. So Paladin clearly has a lot of strength here, and there's a lot of ways you can work in healing hands into different builds. Next up at 4th though, I have Necromancer above that, with the absolutely insane damage potential. A new unique was added in 1.0 called Wraithlord's Harbour, and it basically encourages wraiths through summons to create this new wraith called the Wraith Lord. The Lord consumes non-wraith minions to make itself stronger, and so with this being a new playstyle, the devs obviously made it really strong, and it turned out to be ridiculously strong. By committing to maxing the power of this one specific minion then, you can reach such huge damage through consistent crit, minion spell damage, and basically giving him consistent fodder in the form of zombies. You scale up this special wraith by just using the normal wraith skill tree, it's no problem. And with all the benefits of intelligence and minion damage and the right setup, the damage is just the clear highlight of the build. The damage showcased in this footage shows just how silly it can get. Like a comical 2.2 million hit to crush a target is really impressive, but it gets higher than that at like 5 million one hit. That's entirely possible in the build and beyond. It still needs to function though, so as usual, like many builds right now, it leans heavily on ward to protect itself, able to get around the 20k ward buffer consistently to prevent damage killing it. And then with this incredible damage output, you're pretty much able to kill enemies before they become a real threat, certainly compared to other builds that have to lean harder and reach higher wards for that defensive perk. You will see pretty much all the builds today doing it with low or draining health with huge ward numbers to protect them. It is just the meta of cycle 0. But functionally, you're just buffing the Wraith Lord and letting him do the work, buffing him with Infernal and Dread Shades, and then letting him eat all your zombie minions to keep stacking him up the longer he's going. With the unbelievable damage the Lord immediately gets from that, he will completely outheal the damage over time effects on him, like say with the Infernal buff. So as long as you're fighting constantly, you pretty much can't stop. So it's an extremely popular build right now, and for obvious reasons, it's pushing corruption incredibly well, but it's also just a cool new build. At 3rd place above that though, I still think it's going to be Runemaster even with the bug changes. The Sanguine Runestone bonus of 15% health regen applied as ward was scaling with points invested, so it's getting less value out of that effect with the bug fix. But that's not done anything to say mess with its ability to clear, which is basically the entire screen constantly, while also maintaining a high ward number anyway. And that can be said for a variety of their builds. Lightning or Frost Focus will work really well, but whatever you go with, you've got great mobility and versatile options. The only real downside here with the Runemaster as a whole is that it's perhaps a bit more mechanically demanding than other masteries just by design. With the way the invocations work, the order of your spells, and when you spend that, using the skills in the correct order is not only important for dealing the right skill damage, but also managing your mana. So you do need to know what you're getting into with the Runemaster. Now seemingly the strongest option has been an incredible showcase by creator Pinching Loaf with their lightning focus Runemaster. They've shown incredibly smooth over 1k corruption clears, just standing toe to toe with bosses and instantly killing packs, even in a setting so advanced. The core of it is Lightning Blast, using Spark Charge procs with Lightning Blast. So it's like a touch of death that spreads out, killing everything. You can reach high levels of crit or even cap in this very straightforward focused build design, leading to the ridiculous numbers. Even at ultra high corruption levels, it is just dumpstering everything, while also maintaining its mobility by using Flame Rush anyway to launch yourself around. Defensively, of course, it's still high ward stacking to protect you added to the meta, but here we're obviously talking about a very late game build to reach the numbers shown in this footage. It just shows the potential of this straightforward and focused setup. There are tons of variations on this exact build concept floating around that can be a lot more approachable, but still I recommend the build video by Pinching Loaf. It kind of covers all the details. Above that though, well, of course it's Falconer and Warlock, but the question is, in the foreseeable future post-bug fix patch, which of them is going to be better, with both of them having their literally broken things massively weakened or removed mechanically? Who comes out on top? I think it's fair to say that Warlock was winning between the two of them because it was effectively immortal, which, you know, Falconer could be, but the Warlock's thing was a lot more fluid and easy to do, where Falconer has to kind of stop and do it. They were using the infinite smoke bomb setup that takes that period to set up, so you could easily set that up before a boss, but moving through a monolith, just, you know, you're not doing that. So post-bug fix, time will tell on the showings, but I think these two are still clearly on top. It's not like Warlock's lost its incredible output, it's just got way less warding potential than like the 200,000 examples we were seeing, which is just unreasonable. Falconer's still going to continue to fly through the zones and echo clearing pretty much faster than anyone else. Go figure, the two new masteries are really overtuned for the first cycle. In terms of best build for each though, let's talk about Warlock. We think the Self-Ignite style Torment build is the play, because it's just so much easier to build than the other options like crit and chaos bolts, which are still insanely good. The concept is all about applying ignite to yourself with as many stacks as you can handle without the health drain that it will give you being a problem. The more ignites you have, the better damage reward thanks to the soulfire you need. So the idea is using something like that and other setups, other items, other parts of your Warlock, you're juicing yourself to a maximum point to then start applying peak value torments to targets that kind of begin to cut through their health. So lots of damage over time on the enemies, but also yourself. This is why the 40% down to 4% per minion consumed for your health for your ward is going to be noticeable. You're going to be getting much less ward to actually buffer that self damage going on. But you know, I still think we're talking about more than was remotely reasonable or would matter to your average or even high-end player. If you end up with like 20 to 30k ward compared to 200k post bug fix, I think you're still going to be more than fine. On the other hand, you have Falconer, which is both faster and generally smoother at pushing through monolith echoes with its damage and range of attack. And so the standing still to set up tons of smoke bombs thing, that's just not relevant in this context at all. The survivability potential may have taken a hit technically with this infinite combo, but realistically, the huge increase to each smoke bomb is still going to result in multiple smoke bombs going at once. That's still a ton of survivability. That's still a load of DPS. Shadow Dagger Falconer is still probably going to be the best build. And honestly, it was very clear you didn't need to use this bug to destroy everything at really high levels of corruption anyway. I'm talking like over 1,000, no problem. If you were using the bug, then I guess technically you could go up to like 2,000 plus. There's no reason to do that. As you likely know, the most popular build which has pushed these insane numbers is tied to auto-triggering your shadow daggers and dive bombing ideally onto a smoke bomb to maybe extend its time and radius, right? But it's basically triggering shadow falcons if shadow clones are in the smoke bomb that you're landing on, and it pops loads of dive bombs at once, dealing loads of damage in large AoE. And of course, with any proper cycle 0 setup, that's also going to generate a lot of ward. And so even having said that, clearing echoes is straightforward because you don't really stop to do that. You just drop big bursts of damage on and around you while sprinting forward as you go. It's clearly not the case that you're needing to stand around and maximize this damage and therefore ultimately lean into the bug at any point. Everything's dying so fast at huge range, even in really high corruption, so while the bug can be insane, it's barely even relevant to how strong this really is. But yeah, between the top two contenders of Warlock and Falconer, I actually think Falconer might pull ahead because it's going to feel those bug fixes are much less. The nerfs aren't really going to matter, where the Warlock will probably notice not having that ungodly amount of ward. Time will tell, but that's my assessment for now. That brings us to the end of the video. So I'd also like to highlight that there have been some rumblings with Marksman with a true glass cannon playstyle build. There's huge damage numbers and great corruption clears, but basically no survivability. So it's very much about killing things before you die, which might be appealing to some, might not be appealing to a lot of people, but it deserves a mention in this video because it's definitely like up there as a build. Overall though, we'll see how things turn out with the patches and changes, but these do seem to be the best builds showcased so far in Last Epoch, at least in Cycle 0. For now, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.